I find this exceptionally sad because, Lucas, you talk about how hurt you were and how offended you were by such despicable things, and then you became the thing that you found the most repulsive, which is alarming, and as I mentioned, deeply saddening. I would be more than happy to litigate some of Charlie's positions for you. I abjectly...
I don't think I need any litigation
face,
from a woman who tried to downplay slavery, who tried to all lives matter slavery after she purchased a black child. That's what I would argue. I don't think...
Hey guys, welcome back to Lucas Rant. What you are about to watch is one of the most revealing moments in recent cable news history, and it has nothing to do with good manners. The amazing Lucas sat down on Piers Morgan Uncensored and did something the right-wing media machine has never had to deal with. He picked up their own playbook and turned it directly back on them. The same dark humor they used on George Floyd, the same memes they made about Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin, applied to Charlie Kirk, and the entire panel lost their minds. Piers Morgan suddenly discovered human decency. Jillian Michaels had feelings. The same people who spent a decade telling Black Americans to stop being so sensitive could not handle 60 seconds of their own medicine. Full breakdown at the end. Subscribe and let's get into it.
Titled Charlie Kirk versus Bullet. Can one bullet to the neck outsmart one conservative? Well, that was a short watch. Number 2 is a mocked up promotion poster called Kirk and Twerk at Neck of the Woods and hashtagged both Charlie Kirk and his widow. And the third was an image of a sunrise titled God Works in Mysterious Ways with the hashtag Charlie Kirk killing and praying hands as an emoji. And you're laughing as I show these. Why do you find this funny?
Well, let me just say that I actually am a big advocate for dark humor. And I happen to have gotten a bit of a taste of that over the last, I don't know, maybe decade or so when it came to the right and their memes of George Floyd. Happy birthday being sober for 5 years. When they came to their memes of Breonna Taylor, when it came to their memes of Trayvon Martin, the Trayvon challenge, right? When it came to their memes of Tamir Rice. So I don't know what the issue is. I think I'm engaging in the freedom of speech that the right has been advocating for these last 10 years and mocking and making light of Black death, something that Charlie Kirk himself did time and time again. As a matter of fact, I would argue that if Charlie Kirk, instead of focusing his time on Black culture and Black on Black crime, if he had spent a modicum of his time focusing on the white youth, that perhaps he would still be with us today.
Are you pleased he's dead?
No, absolutely not.
So how did you feel about his murder?
I don't think...
How did you feel about his murder?
How do I feel about his murder?
Yeah.
Well, I think a quote by a great author sums up the sentiment of millions of Americans around the world. And that is, some cause happiness wherever they go, others when they go. And I think that's a sentiment that is palpable amongst many Americans around the world due to the hate and vitriol and bile that Charlie Kirk sowed. So I think there was a pastor
just to be clear, unless I misheard you, then you are happy he died.
No, I don't think as far as happiness is an emotion that
you literally just read me a quote which implies you're happy. You talked about some people's death bring happiness.
The purpose of the quote was to say that there are some people who have caused harm and death and turmoil to other groups of people, such as Charlie Kirk, whether it's Black people, whether it's, trans people.
No, I heard the quote.
The list
just to be
goes on.
clear, you said that the quote ends in that their death brings happiness, but you've denied that you were happy. But when you tell me a quote
I don't disagree.
When you tell me a quote like that, I presume from that quote you're implying that actually you are happy he died because he deserved it. He had it coming.
No, not at all. I don't think those are ever words that I've ever mentioned verbatim ever. I think there is a sentiment that when someone who lives their life in evil and wickedness, according to the scripture, the power of life and death is in your tongue. And the hate and the vile and the venom that he spewed, I don't know what to tell you. As the scripture says, as he professed, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I think his focus should have been on a community that, clearly is in problem. That I find it interesting that there's more scrutiny on people who may make memes that they've done of George Floyd and other Black victims than on the white male youth that did this tragedy, as some would call it.
Why would you be offended about the memes to people like George Floyd, which I found contemptible at the time, if they're the same ones that you're talking about? Why would you profess to be offended by those if you're quite happy to do the same kind of thing yourself?
I think the point that I'm making by the means that I'm putting out, which clearly has caused outrage and triggering, I find it a bit hypocritical that the people for years who said fuck your feelings are now overwhelmed with feelings at the moment. But the point that I was making was to point out the hypocrisy that the right has on a variety and myriad of issues, as we just saw with Pam Bondi on the freedom of speech. I think the issue is that they have scapegoated people like Pam Bondi for what is the crime of Donald Trump. The same thing they did with Anthony Fauci. We saw this when it came to the Second Amendment. They banned bump stock ban. They had a bump stock ban under Donald Trump while they were fear-mongering about Biden take away your guns. But as we saw, there was no outrage, there was no protest, and we come to find out that it was unconstitutional. So I think this hypocrisy is ubiquitous within the right, and I think my memes expose that hypocrisy.
And what about your own personal humanity? I mean, hashtagging his widow in a mocked-up promotion poster of Kirk and Twerk at Neck of the Woods. How do you justify targeting... hang on. How do you justify targeting his widow?
I think that's a bit disingenuous to use such hyperbolic language as targeting. I think it's more of a strategic plan of attack to get the message out to more people. When we saw Erica Kirk, she had a moment to speak for unity within the country, left and right, and she chose to fundraise. She then chose to use the scripture and talk, very nicely of her, past husband. And I understand that. But by that same token, there are people who were absolutely harmed by the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk put out. And that rhetoric actually codified in many cases in many states. So I think it's abhorrent and actually perverse to expect people who are harmed by his rhetoric, harmed by someone who had anti-black, anyone who wasn't white and Christian in his perspective. I think it's perverse to try and criticize those people or try and make them seem as if they're the bad guys when that's
but you see, funny enough, I can look at what you've done and I can see somebody who is abhorrent and despicable and actually evil. Actually, the stuff when you target someone's widow as she grieves and tries to protect her two children.
Targeting.
No.
I'm
talking about me. I'm talking about me personally. My view of what you've done. I don't care about your motivation in terms of other people's inappropriate memes, many of which I may well agree with you about. But that doesn't mean that I then go and do it myself or worse, because that makes me even more inhuman and abhorrent, and by your definition,
I disagree. I think there's
evil. I know you disagree. I'm just telling you. When it comes to Republicans, when it comes to conservatives,
I know. Hang on. They have to see.
I've let you have your say.
I think I'm a mirror.
I've let you have your say.
What they have shown.
I'll let you have your say.
If they don't like what they see, then they should actually detour from their wicked path.
I'm using your own justification to tell you what I think of you and what you've done. All right? That's my free speech at work. Let me bring in Jillian Michaels.
Absolutely agree.
I mean, Jillian, look. I saw Brian there nodding to some of what he was hearing there, not all, to be clear, but nodding to some of it about the hypocrisy which Lucas claims he is exposing with this stuff. What is your view of what he's said?
I find this exceptionally sad because, Lucas, you talk about how hurt you were and how offended you were by such despicable things, and then you became the thing that you found the most repulsive, which is alarming. And as I mentioned, deeply saddening. I would be more than happy to litigate some of Charlie's positions for you. I abjectly...
I don't think I need any litigation from a woman who tried to downplay slavery, who tried to all lives matter slavery after she purchased a black child. That's what I would argue. I don't think you need to as far as litigate anything.
Would you like to discuss it?
Okay.
Because the reality of the situation is that what I gave you, whether you like it or not, is a fact from the 1860 census. And the point is not to downplay slavery.
It is actually a bastardization of actual history. What you cited was inaccurate. You can actually look it up. I don't know if you did. I doubt you do your due diligence. You clearly did not, because in that study that you're citing, in the study that I'm discussing it right now, in the study that you're citing, it takes into account not only the slaves, it takes into account the northern states and the southern states. So to try and implement or to say this all lives matter when it comes to slavery, which is abhorrent and in extreme contradiction to American history, especially in this country as chattel slavery as Black Americans, is abhorrent and perverse, especially you, who is the mother of a Black child, who she purchased.
Right.
Other people
is my
adopt.
turn to talk?
You purchased.
Is it?
By all means.
How did I? Okay, well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by purchase. She's adopted, and it is illegal to purchase a child.
Did you pay to get that child?
No, I paid the adoption agency.
It was
fees
absolutely
to do my
free.
hope study.
It was absolutely okay.
I paid the adoption agency like you.
So then there was a process of
child.
I believe that other people adopt.
Adoption agency. Okay, you're wrong, and that's defamation.
I'm literally right as you're saying that you paid to an adoption agency.
You're literally wrong, and it's this.
I'm literally correct.
You know what you are? You know what you are, Lucas?
I think what's
let me just
is you downplaying
hang on, let me jump in
That's
here.
what I think is
Let me
hateful.
jump in
I
here,
didn't
Lucas.
actually downplay
Let me jump in
slavery.
here, Lucas.
That's
it seems to
literally
me
what you did.
Seems to me, Lucas, you've decided to be just as offensive as you want to be. You're now attacking people who adopt children, which is one of the most selfless things that any human being could do, actually.
This is literally what
But
the
you-
right did to Dave Rubin, is
Fine,
it not?
Fine, but what you're doing is just trying to be as offensive as possible whilst masquerading under this umbrella of, well, everybody else is offensive, so that's why I'm doing it, to expose
Not
all
at
the
all, and I
hypocrisy.
think if that's
But
what I'm
Gillian
giving
is
off, I
right.
apologize
Gillian is
sincerely.
right.
What
that
I'm
actually
merely trying to
you
do
have descended.
is create
you
a
have,
better
the
world.
way you've
What
just
I'm
gone
trying to
after
do is to
Gillian.
unify
You know what,
people.
Lucas?
The
Stop
only way
talking.
we can unify people
Stop
is for
talking.
people to understand the
Stop
harms that they've
talking.
done.
You have targeted Gillian for adopting a child. That is despicable. Let me bring in Riley
I
Gaines.
targeted Jillian for adopting a Black child after she downplayed slavery, which
Right.
I think is contradictory.
You attacked her for adopting a
her
child.
I mean, let's not
14 years
misconstrue
ago.
my words that I'm
So-
saying.
Oh, I heard your words. Let me
Yeah,
bring in.
I
Let me
did
bring
too,
in.
Lucas.
Let me bring in Riley.
You're
Riley.
misinterpreting
Let me
that.
bring in Riley Gaines here.
Sure, buddy.
Riley, you've been waiting patiently.
Let's talk about what actually happened on that panel, because the meltdown you just watched was not about human decency. It was about protecting the most profitable business model in modern right-wing politics: the weaponization of cruelty against people who are not allowed to fight back. Start with the foundation, because you need to understand what Lucas was actually responding to before you can understand why the panel's reaction exposes everything. For over a decade, Charlie Kirk and the right-wing media apparatus built a financial empire, Turning Point USA alone, pulling in tens of millions in billionaire donor money by turning the deaths of Black Americans into viral contents. George Floyd memes, Breonna Taylor jokes, the Trayvon challenge, Tamir Rice punchlines, and the message delivered to anyone who objected was always the same: stop being sensitive. It's just dark humor, free speech, get over it. That was the game. That was the brand. That was the product they sold to their audience for 10 years. So when Lucas sat down on that panel and applied that exact same framework to Charlie Kirk, the reaction tells you everything you need to know about who the rules were actually written for. Piers Morgan, a man who has built a lucrative career platforming right-wing figures and mocking progressive sensitivities, suddenly became the global arbiter of moral decency. Jillian Michaels, a woman with a documented history of downplaying the historical realities of slavery, suddenly had overwhelming feelings about human dignity. And the moment Lucas called out that history directly, she reached immediately for her adopted Black child as a shield. Think about that. The second her own hypocrisy was named on camera, the instinct was to weaponize a child to deflect accountability. Lucas called it correctly and precisely. You tried to all lives matter slavery and then adopted a Black child. That is not an attack on adoption. That is a contradiction that deserves to be named out loud. And Piers had the nerve to call Lucas the offensive one in that exchange. Here's what nobody on that panel was willing to say. Lucas did not invent dark humor about death. He did not introduce cruelty into political discourse. He picked up the tool that the right spent 10 years perfecting and pointed it in a direction they never expected, back at themselves. And when he did that, the people who spent a decade telling marginalized communities to toughen up immediately demanded protection, civility, and and basic human decency. The F your feelings crowd had a lot of feelings very suddenly. That is not a coincidence. That is the entire architecture of the system revealing itself in real time. The hypocrisy argument Lucas made throughout that interview is the one that landed hardest, and the panel could not engage with it honestly, because engaging with it honestly would require them to either defend the George Floyd memes or admit that their outrage is selective. So instead, they pivoted to tone. They pivoted to targeting his widow. They pivoted to personal humanity. Every deflection designed to make Lucas the story instead of the decade of documented cruelty he was responding to. And here's the bigger picture that the original creator correctly identified. This is not just about one debate going sideways. The conservative media machine is not a grassroots movement of people who genuinely care about free speech. It is a billionaire-funded psychological operation designed to keep working-class Americans divided along racial lines so they never look up and identify who's actually picking their pockets. As long as people are fighting each other over memes and internet outrage, they are not organizing against the oligarchs signing the media's paychecks. The cruelty is not a bug, it is the product. It manufactures exactly the division the ruling class needs to maintain the status quo. That is why the panel short-circuited the second Lucas held up the mirror. Because the hypocrisy becoming visible to everyone watching is the one thing the system cannot survive. You cannot sell the brand once everyone can see the brand for what it is. Lucas walked into that studio and did exactly what this channel does every single video. He refused to accept a standard that only applies in one direction. He named the contradiction plainly, and he did not apologize for it. And Piers Morgan and Jillian Michaels sat there demanding civility they have never once extended to the people Lucas was speaking for. If this gave you something real, like the video, share with everyone still pretending the right-wing outrage machine has anything to do with principle. Subscribe to Lucas Rant. We are going to keep holding the mirror up until they cannot look away. See you in the next one.